Hey guys, this week's video I'm just going to be sharing some of my thoughts using the Minolta 135mm lens. It's a manual f3.5 lens, and I thought I'd just share a few images and share some of my thoughts on how the lens performs and things. So this first shot here was out shooting at some cliffs near Christchurch in New Zealand, and there's a nice little path here that trails down here, and there was someone walking along the track here and they had a red backpack on, and it really contrasts with the green and it makes it a nice, it makes the colour pop really nicely there. I'm really pleased with how sharp it was there. You can see it compressed the scene and the path really nicely, and it really shows off the person in the sun there. I kept taking shots around the place, and I saw the walker coming around the corner further down the path, and I thought another nice little shot just as they're coming to the sun there in the foreground. And again, I'm really pleased with how sharp it turned out. I think I was shooting around f8 or something around there, and yeah, I'm just really pleased with that one. Today I was shooting here and just walking along this path above the city here. You can see the lens there just showing off a little bit. It is quite a chunky, sort of heavy lens. You can definitely tell there's a bit of weight on the front of your camera, but it's not too heavy for walking around with, but you definitely notice it there. So in this shot here, I wanted to try and get a panorama type shot, because you get a nice sort of good view over the city here, and it's quite a flat city, so you see the whole, you almost see the entire city just from this vantage point. And the sun was getting some nice shadow on a few spots as well, so I wanted to show them off a little bit. And if you see my other videos as well, I do like to take these kind of panoramic type shots by stitching the images together. So I'm just scanning across in rows here with the lens. I'm at f8 I believe, or maybe f11 it could be, and I'm just scanning across here, and while I'm going up and down here I do notice a little bit of flare coming into the lens, so I really needed a lens hood in this situation, but my lens didn't come with one. I don't know if it does usually, but the one I got didn't come with a lens hood. I'm not sure if that's usual or not, so I had to use my hand to sort of cup the front of the lens to stop the flaring coming up. And yeah, just a little thing I noticed with the lens, it does tend to flare quite easily. But yeah, I am pretty pleased with the way the image turned out. But one thing I did notice is you can see along the top of the sky there's a few semicircles, and that's sort of from each image, and for whatever reason there was sort of this little semicircle flare happening inside the glass of the lens. I'm not 100% sure why, but that was one thing I did notice. Shooting in certain situations you could sometimes see it in the viewfinder, but you would definitely see it a lot clearer once you got back to the computer and see it on a big screen. This next shot here was out one evening just towards sunset, and I thought this would make a nice composition here. You can see a bit of the mountains in the foreground there. They're a bit backlit, so they're shaded, and right in the distance you can't see so well with the GoPro camera here, but there's the gondola station way in the distance there is where you can get the gondola up to the top of the hills. But the gondola is getting lit really nicely by the sun, so I thought that would make a nice contrasting composition with the lines of the backlit mountain, and then you see the sort of the pop of the gondola station, the sun's just casting across it. I thought that would make it an interesting sort of view to the composition as well. Again, I'm really impressed with how sharp this lens is. You can see the gondola station itself is really pin sharp almost. The windows have lots of detail, and the contrast is really nice on it. So this is another panoramic type shot. I noticed there's a bay across the ocean there, this little inlet, and there's some nice yachts in the foreground, and the sun's coming off really nicely against the mountains as it's going quite low in the horizon there, and it's getting some nice yellowing light, and just over the rolling hills you get nice little lumpy sort of shadows popping up. And I thought I'd have another go at a panoramic type shot with this lens and see if I can reduce the amount of sort of flaring that was happening. And as you can see in some of the shots, if you look closely at the viewfinder, in some angles you can actually see the semicircle at the top of the viewfinder there. So I was trying to sort of get in a good angle and see if I could reduce it on the back of the screen there, but sometimes it was hard to tell when you're out and about. It's just more when you got back you would see them more clearly. So I'm really pleased with how this panorama turned out, and it's got a nice bit of dynamic lighting happening over this little small town in this bay here. But the same thing did happen again with the previous one, where you got these little semicircle sort of flares happening, and I was able to correct them in Lightroom somewhat, so you don't notice them as much in the final panorama. Now here's another quick little shot I got while I was in the city. This is just of one of the trams that's go along the street here. I had to move quite quick, and it's a manual lens, you don't get to use autofocus, so I had to try and focus it pretty quick. but I wanted to use this to sort of show the depth of field you can get with the lens. So I think there's a f3.5 on here, and compared to the landscape shots, this is a lot closer to my subject, so you get a bit more of that blurring with the foreground and the background. So you can see on the left there, some of the signs and stuff are blurred out a little bit, and with the tram as the main subject of the composition, it's nice and sharp. But telephoto lenses tend to lend themselves quite nicely to sort of wildlife photography and that type of stuff. So I wanted to show another shot I got while I was at a wildlife park. This is of a cheetah, and it really shows off the depth of field, and it also shows off the sharpness quite a bit. So it's much closer to the subject, so you get a much more sort of depth of field feeling to it. So the background is much more blurred, and you can see a bit of the foreground on the side of the fence there. It's a bit blurred out as well. This is at f3.5 as well, but you can see how sharp you get the lens even at this close. Even at 3.5 you do get a good bit of sharpness on the subject. So I hope you found this week's video interesting and learnt one or two things, and I appreciate it if you'd like the video and subscribe to the channel. Thanks guys.